Everyone, that's right. Good morning. It is Monday, May 31st, coming off of the AEW Double or Nothing 2021 pay-per-view, which was Sunday night, May 30th, from Jacksonville, Florida, at Daly's Place. And this was the biggest crowd for AEW since the pandemic started, a full capacity crowd at Daly's Place. And man, did this ever make a difference? This is like the icing on the cake, having the fans back. I cannot stress how much it was missed. So happy to see the fans back, and they brought the energy to this show big time. People that have been waiting a year to be in person, they were there, and they went absolutely nuts for everything on this show. And it just pushed AEW over the limit. AEW always puts on quality shows, but when you add the fans to the mix, it just takes it to that next level. Anyways, let's get to it. We had our buy-in match, which quite frankly could have been a pay-per-view match. We had Serena Deeb defending the NWA title against Riho, and this was a great match with the ladies. They brought their A game, and the crowd was eating it up. They had a great spot being the first match in front of this full capacity crowd, because the fans, they were popping for everything, and to the ladies' credit, they were delivering in the ring. This was a really good opening kickoff match, one of the best kickoff matches from either WWE or AEW, maybe ever. It's got to be like top 5. I definitely recommend checking it out. Riho held her own against the women's champion, Serena Deeb, but she was selling her knee during the match, and Deeb took advantage of that. It went back and forth. Crowd was chanting, "This is awesome." And Deeb kept hitting these dragon screws to work over the knee of Riho. And Riho was able to come back. Riho hit a dragon suplex and then did a diving foot stomp, but she struggled to make the cover because of the bad knee, and Deeb was able to get on the Serenity Lock and scored the victory. I agree with Elon Brown. Serena looked great. She's the total package. Her and Thunder Rosa, I mean, they're from the NWA, but they have elevated AEW's women's division so much. Riho did tap out to the Serenity Lock. Really strong kickoff match, like I said. I definitely recommend checking it out. And now we get to the main card, 9 matches. The opening match, Hangman Adam Page versus Brian Cage. Taz was doing commentary for this one. Cage had some body armor for his entrance, big pay-per-view entrance. Both wrestlers got huge reactions from the fans. Adam Page was way over. Crowd was doing the cowboy shit. Even though that line hasn't been used in over a year, the crowd was just right back at it with the cowboy shit chant. And they were into it. They were into the comebacks. They were chanting, "Let's go, Hangman." You had Page doing his trademark moonsault to the outside. They went back and forth for a while. And you had Cage suplexing Page out of the ring onto the ramp. The crowd started chanting, "Holy shit." But then Cage made the heel mistake. All heels do this in wrestling. When they try to go for the other guy's finisher, they get a little bit too cocky, and it backfires on them. He went for the buckshot lariat, but Page, of course, knows his own move and was able to avoid it. And then Cage was able to hit a spinning Liger bomb. Page, however, kicked out of it. We had Team Taz coming down to the ring, and Brian Cage had requested that they not interfere. He was going to do this alone. So they came down anyways. Ricky Starks slid in the FTW title. Cage, however, refused to cheat. So this is all part of his babyface turn. He refused to cheat. and it backfired on him. He should have cheated because Page was able to hit the buckshot lariat, pick up the victory. And then after the match, Page drank some beer. You had Cage in the ring with Team Taz, very upset. Taz was upset on commentary about Cage not taking advantage of the situation. So it looks like we're going to see a babyface turn from Brian Cage. No surprise here. Figured Page would get his win back, but you advanced the Team Taz storyline. Good stuff here from these guys. Fun way to open up the pay-per-view. The crowd was red hot. They really added to the excitement for this. So thumbs up. So far, so good with the pay-per-view. Next up, we had the Young Bucks versus Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston for the AEW Tag Team titles. I have to say, the Wild Thing entrance, to me, having the fans there for this just took it to the next level. Like, it felt major league. And I compared it on Twitter to the Sandman's entrance in ECW with Enter Sandman. Just that iconic fan entrance with the Sandman coming through the crowd. And I'm sure this was an influence for Moxley and Kingston coming through the crowd to Wild Thing and having the fans sing along. It was so much fun. Of course, Don Callis was out there on commentary for this match, and they brawled a lot. I mean, it just went straight into a brawl right from the get-go. Brandon Cutler was trying to interfere, but he got taken out. And then we pretty much had your standard tag team title match in the ring. Anderson and Gallows attempted to interfere, but Frankie Kazarian made the save. Of course, he's got a bone to pick with the Elite. And the referee got distracted from all this, and Matt used a spray can on Moxley. They hit the Dave Meltzer driver to Moxley on the stage, which busted open Moxley. However, Moxley was able to tag Eddie Kingston back in. And by the way, the Bucks also mocked the Shield during this match. They even tried to do the power bomb spot, but that did not work. Kingston got in. Moxley and Kingston did a doomsday device using the Young Bucks' shoes, but Nick was able to make the save for Matt. Crowd was loving this. They chanted "Fight Forever." Moxley did manage to hit the Paradigm Shift. However, the pinfall was broken up, and the Bucks hit dueling super kicks to Moxley. Moxley popped right back up and won. He had a second wind, but then they hit several BTE triggers and finally managed to pin Jon Moxley. I was not a fan of the Bucks retaining. Other than that, the match was awesome. Great match here with these guys, but I think it was the wrong call. I think Eddie Kingston really needed this win, and he's in danger of being that guy that keeps coming close to winning something big and coming up short. And I think the timing was right for a title change here to really elevate Eddie Kingston. Bucks don't need the titles. I think that it could have really elevated Kingston, but maybe with Renee Young due to give birth soon, that was a reason to not do a title change. However, if it was me, I would have had a title change here and give it to Eddie Kingston. But it is what it is. Bucks are still the champs. And Chensha, I'm not going to pronounce the last name, official with a $5 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Says, the ending for the Bucks of Youth and Moxley Kingston lost momentum towards the end, and the ending felt off. Well, funny you say that, because my fiance Caitlin was watching this match with me, and she said the same thing. She said that towards the end she was getting into it, but then she lost interest at the end, like the last 2 or 3 minutes of the match. Like when the crowd was really getting into like Moxley popping back up, like that should have been it. That should have been the title change. I do think the match went on a bit too long, especially if you're not doing a title change, for it to drag on that long and then there's no title change. So yeah, it wasn't perfect, but overall it was a damn good tag team match. I still enjoyed it, and the crowd was just awesome for it. We'll move on here to the next match, which was the Casino Battle Royale. We had Christian Cage, and I'm not going to name all the other guys, but there were a lot of people in it, 20 plus the Joker. You had Paul White on commentary for the match. The first 5 were Christian, Matt Sydal, Powerhouse Hobbs, Dustin Rhodes, and Max Caster, who did his pre-match rap. And he had a couple good lines here. He said that, not Edge, I already screwed it up. He said Christian was cooler when he had an edge, and the crowd ooh and awed that. And he also made a reference to Matt Sydal slipping at last year's Casino Battle Royale, and then also referred to Dustin Rhodes as ugly, saying that he should paint his whole face. So some nice lines there from Max Caster. And for trivia purposes, Matt Sydal was the first person to be eliminated via Caster. We had a little confrontation between Matt Hardy and Christian at one point. And then Jungle Boy was part of one of the next groups of people. And he got a huge reaction. Maybe, I'm not going to say the biggest pop of the night, but he did get a massive pop. And I will say those 80s theme songs, the Jungle Boy song and the Wild Thing song, the 80s cover, those seem to really work as far as entrance music and getting the big reactions from the fans. So anyways, it came down to the Hardy box office, Hardy, Cassidy, and Marq Quen against Christian and Jungle Boy. And then we had the wild card entrant, who was Lio Rush, former WWE star Lio Rush, former Cruiserweight champion. I wasn't expecting anything big. Like, I set my expectations low, so it's not like I was disappointed or anything with it. Another good wrestler they're bringing in, whatever. He got some moves in, but ultimately he was eliminated. And then it was just down to Matt Hardy, Jungle Boy, and Christian. And Matt wanted to work together with Christian, but Christian just eliminated Matt instead. So no WWE reunion from those guys. And it was down to Christian and Jungle Boy going back and forth. And in perhaps a big upset, it was Jungle Boy that eliminated Christian to pick up the win. I did not expect that. I thought Christian was going to win. AEW already planted the seeds for a match between Christian and Omega. The rest of Jurassic Express came down to celebrate with Jungle Boy, and then Christian got in the ring, showed some sportsmanship, gave Jungle Boy a hug. So it was good in a way that Christian put over Jungle Boy and made him look good. They're doing Omega versus Jungle Boy in 2 weeks, which, I mean, I would have at least waited until July 7th when they're on the road again. But, you know, they're doing it in 2 weeks, and I suspect Omega will win. I kind of jumped ahead here, but I suspect Jungle Boy will not be winning the title. Let's put it that way. But funny enough, as TJS points out, the crowd actually booed Christian. I mean, that's how much they wanted Jungle Boy to win. So in a way, it was the right decision to have Jungle Boy win, because the crowd was behind Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy was the one who had the sympathy. He was the sentimental favorite. Hamp Connell with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Hamp. I appreciate it. Says, now it's time for me to chime in. What the hell are they thinking having Jungle Boy win? I can't take him seriously. He's a turd. I like Jungle Boy. A lot of people like Jungle Boy. I still think Luchasaurus was the star of the group, but they're pushing Jungle Boy. They're hell-bent on making Jungle Boy work, and maybe it will work. I mean, he's definitely got a unique look to him. He's good in the ring. He's young. He's got a lot of things going for him, and well, we'll see if it works out for him. But yeah, it feels like they're just going to do a match in 2 weeks. Omega will make him look good, and that'll be that. Moving on here, we had Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Ogogo, and this was probably the low point of the show. I had little interest in this match going in. They had a Memorial Day video package, and Cody came down dressed up in a red, white, and blue costume, and it was pretty much what you would expect it to be. They were doing the feel-good match for Memorial Day weekend, USA versus the UK, USA chants, and Ogogo hit some of his body shots, and he got some offense in, and you had QT Marshall trying to interfere. Arn Anderson held him off with a chair. And Omega did hit the punch to Cody, went for the pinfall, and because of his inexperience, he did not realize that Cody's arm was under the bottom rope, so the referee stopped it, and then Cody won the match with a vertebraker. That's right, a vertebraker. So Ogogo didn't even lose to like Cody's signature move. He lost to a vertebraker. So that's that. Match was all right, but, it was probably the weakest match of the show. Did not need to be on this pay-per-view. And I've said this before. I know AEW is trying to give you bang for your buck. It's a 4-hour pay-per-view, and they want to make sure you're getting the most value for your money. But 4 hours is just such a long show. And they end the shows at midnight. This match did not need to be on pay-per-view. Like, how about charging $40 and giving us a 3-hour show instead and cut out a few of these matches that are not really necessary for a pay-per-view? It did not need to be on a pay-per-view, in my opinion, at least this match. And quite frankly, I would have rather seen Serena Deeb's match with Riho on the pay-per-view instead of Cody's match. But got to have Cody on the pay-per-view, I guess. He is an EVP after all. Next up, we had Miedo versus Lance Archer for the TNT Championship. And this was a good match, Again, it probably could have been saved for a Dynamite with a loaded card already. You could have cut this out and had a 3-hour pay-per-view. Or as TJS says, started an hour earlier. I mean, I would be a fan of that too. Jake Roberts was not out there because he had been attacked, but he did come out later in the match. He brought out his snake in the bag, and Miedo took the bag and tossed the bag all the way to the stage. So I guess killing the snake in the process. Not as cool as when Earthquake killed Damien, but if we actually had seen the snake used at some point, maybe we would have had an emotional attachment to it. But yeah, they did the old tossing the snake and killing the snake spot. Back and forth match here, brawl. Lots of high impact moves from these guys. But after Archer hit a pounce that knocked Miedo to the outside of the ring, Miedo was able to make a comeback from that and put the game over on. Archer did not submit. He passed out from the game over, so I guess he looks strong in defeat. But yeah, Archer's another guy who is losing a lot and keeps coming up short in these big match situations. So what do you really do with Archer now? I mean, he was definitely the babyface in this match, but where does he go from here? That's the question. Moving on here, we had Hikaru Shida versus Britt Baker for the AEW Women's Championship. And they did announce that All Out will be in Chicago on September 5th, I believe. Sunday, September 5th. It's the day after Big G's wedding, and Big G's wedding is nowhere near Chicago. So, unfortunately, I will not be in Chicago for All Out. I was hoping to make it, but Big G, gotta be at your wedding. I will be there as promised. And maybe we'll have a post no DQ recap in person of that All Out pay-per-view. So anyways, good match here from the ladies. They were going back and forth with the crowd doing the dueling chants. Let's go Shida, D.M.D. I feel like as the match went on, the people were more behind Britt Baker because I think there were people starting to feel a little uneasy and thinking maybe Shida would retain the title, so they kind of turned on Shida at that point because I think deep down people really wanted Britt Baker to win the title here, but they were playing along with Shida being the babyface. Party Man Howard with a $5 super chat says, will AEW turn Baker face due to the cheers? I don't think they will, because you got Thunder Rosa. I mean, that's a built-in rematch for the title. And there's other possibilities. Red Velvet is a possibility. Some of the other women that are building up their win-loss records could challenge Baker. But maybe down the line, if she continues to get these good reactions, you could always turn her face. There was a lot of interference in this match. You had Rebel trying to distract the referee, and she ended up being ejected by the referee. But while this was happening, Baker hit a curb stomp using the women's championship. So Rio's head going right into the title. But Shida was able to kick out of that. And then Shida made a comeback, got a near fall on Baker, but then Baker got the lockjaw on, and Shida tapped out, giving Britt Baker her first women's championship, ending Shida's year reign as champion. Crowd popped big for it, even though Baker cheated throughout the match. Afterwards, Tony Schiavone came up and gave Baker a big hug, so they're cool now. Didn't they have this whole big feud last year? I guess it's all good now, and maybe some people interpreted that as a face turn, the fact that Tony Schiavone hugged her at the end, and that's kind of like Schiavone giving her the props and putting her over and all that. And it's interesting to see where they go, because I could definitely see a Britt Baker face turn at some point. But very happy that Britt won the title. Big moment here for her. And the match was pretty good. Wouldn't say it was my favorite AEW women's match. I think at this point I would still go with the Lights Out match with Baker and Thunder Rosa. But this was up there. I mean, probably top 5. Moving on here, we had a tag team match. Sting and Darby Allin versus Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. And this match was about as good as you could hope for with the 60-plus-year-old Sting in there. I will say everything Sting did in this match looked pretty good. Like, they really protected him and let him do a few moves, and the match was laid out very well, in my opinion. So before the match, there was a vignette of Sting and Darby Allin in a desert, which I'm 95% positive was Santa Clarita, California. Jeff, I saw you in the chat earlier. Do you recall that clip? And if so, do you think it was Santa Clarita? Because I thought it was Santa Clarita, California. 95% sure. And Sting, I'm not sure if he still has a home there, but he did live in that area at one point in time. We have a super chat here from Lilky, not even going to try to pronounce this, Busha, with a $5 super chat, says, who realistically do you see taking the AEW title off Omega? I said this a few weeks ago, maybe even on the prediction show, but I think it's got to be Adam Page, especially after this show. Adam Page got such a big reaction that I feel like it has to be him. It's got to be him if you're going to try to build him up and push him as the next big star in the company. I'm thinking it's going to be Page. Adam Page is the guy. But we'll talk more about that in a few minutes here. Darby went right after these guys. They brought on the outside of the ring. Scorpio Sky suplexed Sting on the stage, and Sting just popped right back up from it. Crowd went nuts for that, and then Sting jumped off the stage onto both Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And then it was pretty much the kind of match you would expect, where Sting was on the apron and Darby Allin was in the ring most of the time. They did do a fun little moment where they had Sting get tagged in, but the referee didn't see it, so it didn't count. So you got Sting in there to do a few moves, and then he got back out again. That was creative. Whoever came up with that, good job to get a little bit more ring time in for Sting without actually having him to do a lot. That was well done. Dylan with a $10 super chat. Thank you very much for that, Dylan. I appreciate it. He says, that's the difference between AEW and WWE. AEW uses older guys like Hardy, Christian, Sting as supporting characters for the younger guys, whereas WWE uses older guys to put down and bury young guys. Good point there, Dylan. And I think that you do want to get some value from those guys. Like, I think there's value in Christian versus Omega. But you don't want to water down Christian too much before you do that Omega match. So you got to be careful with how you time things. But yes, ultimately, Christian, Paul White, and the new guy that debuted, I'll talk about that in a minute. Ultimately, they should be there to be putting over other guys and making stars out of those guys. So anyways, back to the match. There was one cool moment where Paige picked up Darby and just tossed him over the top rope all the way past the barricade to the front row. Kind of reminded me of ECW. Darby barely made the 10 count back in, and Sting eventually got the hot tag, hit the signature moves, Stinger Splash. He even hit a code red on Paige. Crowd was chanting, "You still got it." Darby tagged back in, and it went back and forth here a little bit. Referee had to restore order at one point because there were dueling submissions. And then it was down to Sting and Scorpio Sky in the ring. Sky went for the cutter, but Sting held on to the rope and turned it into a Scorpion death drop and pinned Scorpio Sky. And I see the chat room comments to counter Dylan's comment. Sting did pin Scorpio Sky here. I'm a little surprised by that. I thought it would have been Darby picking up the win. Sting doesn't need to be pinning people. I think it's better to have Darby do it. But, I guess one win for Sting is good. Give him a pinfall victory. I'm surprised it was over Scorpio and not Ethan Page, although Ethan Page just came into the company. But I feel like maybe Scorpio Sky has more upside. I'm not sure. I think it's a coin flip, really, between those two guys. But, yeah, I expected Darby to get the pinfall victory, but it was Sting that got it. Like I said, match was really good for what it was. As TJS says, Sting pinned Harold. All right, now we'll move on to the first of our two main events, which, as I expected, the Stadium Stampede match was the main event. So we had our triple threat match between Kenny Omega, Orange Cassidy, and Pac. Don Callis was on commentary. I'm not going to play-by-play it too much. You can read the results on NoDQ.com. A lot of stuff happened in this match. A lot of moves back and forth. It was just one big move after another. And all three guys got their own shining moments where they got to have the offensive moves on the other guys. I mean, there was really no slow point. Triple threat matches can tend to be slow if you have one guy just laying out there on the outside and then it's basically one-on-one. But there were a lot of moments with all three guys involved in spots. So it was a very fast-paced match, which I enjoyed. I do like the matches where all three guys are interacting. If you're going to do a triple threat match, you might as well have all three of them doing things instead of one guy gets hit and he's laid out there dead. Did I say Kenny Omega was pushing 60? People are saying that in the chat room. It is well past midnight, so if I screw up here, keep in mind I'm pretty tired. Anyways, let's get back to the match. You had Cassidy trying to do the lazy pins. He was doing his shtick with putting his hands in his pockets and whatnot, but for the most part, he was being serious. It's all mind games with all that stuff. That's pretty much the gimmick anyways. Hamp Connor with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Hamp. Says, they hyped up anything goes just to have a simple triple threat match. I didn't like that very much. Match was very good, though. Well, the thing is, you can't have too many outside the ring activities when you're going to be having a stadium stampede match, because then that just becomes overkill. But yeah, anyways, it is triple threat, so anything goes. And, you know, that kind of gave away how this was going to end, you know, when you have Justin Roberts saying, and it's very clear, he's saying, this match is no disqualification. It's like, it's kind of like a neon sign that there's going to be interference in this match. Kevin sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Kevin. I appreciate it. It says, as one of the very few people who watch Impact, I really wished they used Moose in some run-in capacity in the title match to make the drama stronger. Yeah, I did mention this on the predictions video, but I don't think we're going to see much of the Impact guys in AEW. I think if they were going to do it, it would have happened by now. I don't think Moose is going to be beating Kenny Omega. I mean, somebody's got to beat Omega at some point, but I wonder if they're going to wait and see if they could pick up a former WWE guy to beat Omega. Guess we'll have to wait and see. Maybe Omega just forfeits it. Wouldn't shock me if that happens either. Anyways, back to the match. Omega hit a series of V-triggers to the other two guys. And like I said, they were taking turns. Omega would get offense on both guys, and then Pac would get offense on both guys. Omega attempted an avalanche dragon suplex to Cassidy, but Pac climbed up and suplexed Omega instead. And then Cassidy did do the hands in his pockets and did a dive to Pac. And then back in the ring, Omega hit the Tiger Driver 98, got a near fall on Cassidy. Crowd was chanting, "This is awesome." And Pac ended up hitting an avalanche Falcon Arrow to Omega, which led to Cassidy trying to steal the pin, but he was unsuccessful. Omega kicked out from that. And Pac then hit a Black Arrow to Cassidy. Omega was able to stop that pinfall. And it just kept going on and on for a while. So, yeah, at some point it became a little much. Like they just kept doing near fall after near fall on a show with near fall after near fall after near fall, which again, better if you have like a 3-hour pay-per-view so you can cut at least a few of those matches with near fall after near fall. Cassidy hit the beach break to Omega. Omega kicked out of it. And then Cassidy got another second win, like his third or fourth one of the match. Hit a bunch of orange punches. And at this point, Don Callis was very concerned. He left the broadcast area. And just as Orange Cassidy was about to score the pinfall victory, Don Callis pulled out the referee. Crowd chanted, "F you, Don," but they did not say F. They said the whole word. Pac then put on the brutalizer on Cassidy, but then Omega attacked the referee, and again, no disqualifications. Omega then grabbed one championship at a time. He came to the ring with all of his championships. He has 4 of them, the TNA, Impact, AAA, and the AEW World titles, and he used all 4 of them one at a time on Pac. But then he got hit with the orange punch again from Cassidy. Aubrey Edwards ran down to the ring and made the count. However, Omega countered, even though he got hit with the orange punch, he countered the pinfall and scored the win over Orange Cassidy. Kind of reminded me of when Darby Allin hit the coffin drop on Cody, and Cody managed to counter that into a pinfall. So kind of a silly finish in my opinion. But hey, Omega is still the champion. No surprise there. Match was really good though. I enjoyed it. I do think maybe they went a bit too much with all the near falls and stuff, but it was still very entertaining. And then we had our main event of the evening. But before I get to that, I have to talk about the latest signing in AEW, and that is Marq Henry. That's right, Marq Henry, the world's strongest man. The WWE career guy, even more than Big Show, because Big Show did have a run in WCW. Marq Henry, from the time he got into wrestling in 1996, He always worked for WWE, the only company he ever worked for. And he's now part of AEW as an analyst for the upcoming AEW Rampage show. And he will also be a coach. And I'm guessing we will have at least one more match for Mark Henry at some point. Dylan with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Dylan. Says, Kenny Omega is the best today. Who's Roman Reigns? Ooh, Dylan, shame on you for that one. And you might get some heat in the chat room for that. You're going to get heat from me a little bit because Kenny ain't no Roman Reigns. I'll say that right now. Maybe as far as hitting a million V-triggers goes, but as far as character and just overall presence and credibility, I think nobody tops the Tribal Chief. But nice try there, Dylan. And Gary says, Henry is there to be a coach. Big difference from burying guys like others would do in WWE. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Mark Henry will do a couple matches. He'll probably put somebody over. Maybe he'll win a match or two. But yeah, I was a little surprised just because I felt like he would be a WWE lifer. I mean, what's next? Are we going to see Glenn Jacobs show up next? Mayor Jacobs will be a character in AEW, or excuse me, he'll be a coach or an analyst. Is that what we're going to come down to at some point? We're going to have Kane on AEW Dynamite? Like, he's got to be the next one, right? So yeah, Mark Henry with AEW, and again, he'll probably do 2 or 3 matches, and he'll do something, and he'll do his commentary. But yeah, they got to do something with Big Show at some point. You got to get Big Show in there with Omega or somebody and get some use out of his name value. Oh, and by the way, another funny thing is JR backtracked on his comments. On his podcast, JR called Randy Orton the best wrestler in the world today. A lot of people were upset about that, especially AEW fans, calling JR a traitor. And on this show, JR did refer to Kenny Omega as the best wrestler in the world. So there you go. Guess Tony Khan got that whip out and had to put good old JR in his place. Elon Brown says Big Show versus Shaq. Yeah, they could do it. I mean, that was a match they were talking about for years, and Shaq is all elite. Would not shock me. And Dylan says he legit has no investment in Roman, hasn't watched WWE in years. You're missing out, Dylan. I am going to tell you, Roman Reigns is the best character in wrestling. He's had the best storylines. If there's anything to watch from WWE right now, it's Roman Reigns' stuff. So I'm just going to throw that out there. You're missing out. Kevin with a $5 super chat says, can't believe JR recanted his statement on the broadcast. It said Omega is the best wrestler in the world. Rolls eyes. Well, you gotta do what you gotta do when the man that signs your paychecks tells you to call Kenny Omega the best in the world on the pay-per-view. You best be doing it. And JR, he's a good company guy in the end. He will do what he's asked to do. So that's that. All right, so now we get to the main event, which was the Stadium Stampede match, which was pretty long. It was a bit long. It did feel like a rehash of last year. They tried to do some different things, but one thing I didn't like about this was the fact that you had the fans in the arena. Why are you doing 30 minutes of a cinematic match when you have 5,000 people in the building live? So when they announced this, I was a little surprised, and I thought, okay, they'll do half and half. They'll do maybe 10 minutes in the stadium, and they'll just quickly brawl over into the arena. But no, they did probably 90% of the match as a cinematic match. I mean, almost all of it was done in the stadium, in the backstage areas. And it was very long, too. It was probably, 40 minutes with about 35 minutes being backstage stuff. And they did very little in the actual stadium. So you call it Stadium Stampede. and barely any of it was in the stadium itself. They did have the ring set up in the stadium, the empty stadium, but that was literally like a minute of the match. You had Sammy Guevara in there for a minute with Shawn Spears, and then that was that. They quickly left that ring and went elsewhere. For the entrance, we had Chris Jericho and the Inner Circle. They were at the very top of the stadium above the scoreboard, and they had these cables, and they came down the cables kind of like what Sting would do from the rafters, lowering themselves down into the middle area of the stadium. They had a bunch of pyro go off. MJF tried to hide in his limousine. Jericho managed to get MJF out of the limo. And then they ended up fighting in the backstage area, and they had an extensive brawl backstage. And by the way, TGS sent in a $5 super chat going back to earlier, says, What's AEW's next signee? Marq the Mortician Calloway, a ghoulish entity impervious to pain who demolishes opponents with the gravestone pile driver. So there you go. TGS sent in $5 to do that lame joke. But thank you, TGS. I appreciate it. Now, back to the match here. Jericho and MJF were brawling in one part of the building, and they did a throwback to The Rock versus Mankind from Halftime Heat, where MJF threw coffee in Jericho's face and then acted like he was answering the phone, but saying he was a little busy beating up Jericho. Same thing The Rock did. I thought this was pretty cool. I did like the little throwback. And they ended up fighting in a different part of the area. They were going all over the place. And the Jacksonville Jaguars coach, Urban Meyer, made a cameo in this match. I'm starting to lose my voice now. We're going so late. We had Jake Hager and Wardlow brawling in a different backstage area. They were in this freezer room with a bunch of animal meat. Kind of felt like a haunted house, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre style with the animals. And then they were in this warehouse. Hager chokeslammed Wardlow through a platform. And then we had Shawn Spears and Guevara. Shawn Spears was in this room filled with chairs, and they ended up in a different warehouse. Maybe it was the same warehouse. Spears handcuffed Guevara, walked away, but Guevara, luckily for him, was able to find a pair of bolt cutters. We then had FTR in a nightclub with Santana and Ortiz. There was music playing. It was revealed that Conan was the DJ. Yes, we got Conan making another cameo. He made a cameo several months ago in that Las Vegas sequence. There's a big brawl between the two tag teams in the club. And then back to Jericho and MJF. You had Tony Khan's father, a cutout of him at least, being used as a weapon. They fought into a conference room, and MJF gave Jericho a pile driver on the table. Jericho was in trouble. MJF was going to use a hammer on Jericho's bad arm, but Jericho managed to recover from that. He found Floyd. He used Floyd on MJF, threw MJF through a glass door. MJF was busted open. And then they went back into Daly's place finally. Jericho acted like he was going to throw MJF off of the balcony, but that did not happen. And this was actually the last time we saw Jericho and MJF. So for this whole feud between them and Jericho getting his revenge, kind of an anticlimactic end to the Jericho MJF portion of this. So we went back to Shawn Spears and Guevara. We had a bunch of Inner Circle Motorcycle Club guys that were chasing Spears around. And then Sammy Guevara, now that he's a babyface, he was the one that used the golf cart. Remember, he was being chased by Matt Hardy last year. And this year, he's the one that's driving the golf cart. He hit Shawn Spears with a golf cart, and somehow Spears was okay. They ended up back in the ring. It was just the two of them. Everybody else was gone. And Spears used the chair on Guevara. Guevara kicked out of it, made a comeback, and then hit a 630 senton splash to pin Spears, giving the Inner Circle the victory. Little surprised here. I mean, AEW went with the feel-good ending. Inner Circle wins, happy ending, big post-match celebration. Everyone's singing Judas. It was a nice feel-good ending to the show, but yeah, I was not expecting Inner Circle to win this one. I guess it works because Guevara got the rub here. Guevara was the star. Guevara was the one that won the match for the team, and they put him up on their shoulders at the end. So it was big for Guevara. It got him a big win. Yeah, it was 50-50 booking, but if you're going to have the Inner Circle win, I get why they went this route. It made sense. TJS with a $5 super chat says, I paid $60 for this show, and I think I got my money's worth. Not every match was great, but gotta have a cool down. Loved SS, but the ending was underwhelming. SS meaning Stadium Stampede. Yeah, I figured they were going to end it with Jericho and MJF, but, you know, what they did, giving Guevara the spotlight, was cool with me. If it was me, I would have cut out about half of the backstage stuff they did and did half of it in the arena, maybe had them brawl through the arena more with the fans. So yeah, I would have done it a bit differently, but all in all, fun main event. And, you know, some of the stuff they did was similar to last year, but I do like the golf cart flashback or throwback, you know, recreation of that with Sammy now as the face. So yeah, all in all, great pay-per-view. Another great pay-per-view from AEW. Dylan sent in a $10 super chat, says, look like I made some guys mad with my Kenny comment, oops. Also, I love JR, but seriously, Randy over Omega, come on. Randy always puts my ass to sleep. Kenny always puts on a good show since at least 2016. Well, there you go. Everybody's got their own tastes. Some people like Randy Orton's more slow, methodical pace. Some people like Kenny Omega, who has more intensity with his moves and hits a lot more moves. I mean, just depends on what your criteria is. Some people like mat wrestling. Some people like high spots. Just depends on what you like. So, my overall grade, I give it an A-. Great show. The crowd really added to it, big time. I probably would have gone with a B+ if it was like 500 people in the building, but because of the atmosphere, I give it a little bit of a boost. And yeah, I would have cut out a few matches, make it 3 hours, and I would have done a few things differently with the main event, and I would have had the title change. I would have had Kingston and Moxley win the titles. So, few issues I had, but all in all, great show. Definitely worth the money, in my opinion. And I say this every pay-per-view. I wish Tony Khan would start these pay-per-views an hour earlier, but gonna fall on deaf ears, it looks like. Chencha Official with a $10 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Says, Aaron, you're an 80s kid. Do you think Miro's ring antics tonight were mimicking the villain Chun-Li from the movie Bloodsport with the arms motion, closed fists, and face look gestures? Well, I hate to tell you this, but I have no idea who that character is. So, unfortunately, I can't for you. But would not shock me if there was some kind of influence. Like, if it's popular, perhaps it was an influence, but that's something you would have to ask Miro directly, I suppose. Maybe if you tweet him, he'll respond. And Marcus with a $2 super chat says, which women's match was the best tonight? I actually thought that the kickoff match was better. Maybe I was just starting to feel tired by the Shida match, but I really enjoyed that Serena Deeb Riho match. I thought that was a really good match and on par with some of the matches that were actually on the pay-per-view. But of course, the bigger moment was Britt Baker winning the title. But I do think, as far as the actual match itself goes, I really liked that buy-in match. Marcus Metcalf, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let's get to some of these letter grades here. Matt Helms with an A+. Gary gives it a B+. Likes that we saw three future stars having their moments. Dylan with an A. Calvin Bowman with a B+. Elon Brown with an A. Dr. NXT Scorpio with an A-, and TJS with an A-. Too many pre-match attacks. Yeah, that was the other thing too. And you know, when you do a 4-hour show and there's just tons of the kickouts at 2, the near falls, you know, it gets a little bit too much after a while. But yeah, overall, you know, watch it in parts. You know, watch 2 hours of it and then watch another 2 hours later. But all in all, great show from AEW. Happy the fans are back. Looking forward to AEW going back on the road. Same with WWE. And that's all I got for tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Tell a friend about the channel and NoDQ.com. You can get all the results over at NoDQ. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. And I will see you all next time.